on the line, CBS Sports play-by-play extraordinaire, Jim Nantz. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Hello, friends. I'm so happy to be on the airwaves in Dallas. Can't wait to get there. And, man, it's just a thrill to have a Cowboy 49er matchup, bringing back a whole lot of memories for some of us who have been around long enough to remember what it was like in those golden days.
Jim, we were wondering this because we think of the late John Madden calling a lot of those games with Pat Summerall, and you're on CBS. Have you called a Cowboys playoff game, and when was the last one that you called if you did?
Yeah, it's a great question. I actually did. You ready for this? When we lost the NFL, this was at the end of the 93 season, when Fox came in and outbid us and took the NFC away from us. Remember, we were the longtime carrier of the NFC back to the NFL when the AFL then became the AFC, was on NBC all of those years. I was on the number 2 team behind Pat and John. And our next to last weekend, which was a divisional weekend, I called Green Bay at Dallas. I think Pat and John, I can't remember the game they had, but I did a Saturday playoff game. It would have been like the very first weekend of January, I want to say, of 1994. It was Pat and John did the next game on Sunday, and then they did the championship game the following week. So, yep, I was there for a Cowboy playoff game. Man, you're talking 28 years ago, but we certainly didn't expect to get this one because here we are again, aligned with the AFC, but they gave us an NFC matchup, and we're thrilled.
I want to hear a little bit more if you know anything about that process, but first, what I just heard, what I know that you said, and you can confirm it, is the last time you called a Cowboys playoff game, that season they won the Super Bowl. That's what I just took from that.
Is that true, Jim?
Yes, that's correct. It is absolutely correct.
Awesome.
And somebody can look it up really quickly, I'm sure, and come up with what the score was. But I remember being rather high scoring, and I called the game with Randy Cross, and we were the 2 team that year. And listen, Pat and John will be very much on my mind when we get this game started. In fact, we're going to be opening the show with what we call a tease, of course, in the business. It's going to have a lot of those flashbacks and calls from that 3-year sequence of matchups in the NFC Championship game. And, I mean, here we are just a couple of weeks removed from losing John, and he was a great friend. And I'm still kind of shook from it, to be honest. It seems a little bit like, almost like the scheduling gods were thinking about John in this case and said, let's bring the game back to CBS where it used to be. And we're the beneficiaries of whatever the thinking was. It's a great game. I think it's the game of the weekend. It'll be the highest rated audience, no question. Tony and I can't wait to do it.
I've got the score down at 27-17, if that sounds accurate for Cowboys-Packers.
I would have thought they were in the 30s, but, it was, the guys who were on the field for those 2 teams that day. I mean, it was just loaded with great players and future Hall of Famers, and, it was a lot of fun. And if you have that season, I want to say their next to last regular season game, they played Washington.
Yep.
It might have been on either I think it was the 26th of December.
It was.
That would have been 93. Yeah, I was there for that one. I did a lot of Cowboy games back in those days, and I loved it.
How do you, I know you said it was a fortuitous run of y'all getting this game, but do you know any more about like how they decide this? Because like you said, we're so used to Fox for the last generation. How exactly did this game end up on CBS?
In the last couple of years, the league has started to cross-flex, is what they call it. They give Fox some AFC matchups that come out of our inventory, and it works the other way back to us. And last year, surprisingly, it happened on this exact weekend, wild card weekend. We ended up getting Chicago at New Orleans in the wild card game. Not the sexiest matchup of all time, but knowing this was going to be the last run for Drew, figuring it would be, and we were kind of stoked about it. So we had that game down in New Orleans. And that was a little out of left field, it felt like, because they had been doing these cross-flex schedulings during the regular season for the last handful of years. It would amount to about 5 games a year would switch inventory between the 2 networks, but they'd never done it in a playoff game. Now, moving forward, I don't know what they're going to do for the divisional round, but I believe it'll go back in place, so we wouldn't see an NFC game next week. And then 2 weeks out, it's all locked in. We have the AFC Championship game. That game will be early. If the Cowboys find themselves in the NFC Championship game for the right to go to the Super Bowl, it's already been announced that the NFC game will go second that day on that Sunday. And it will be a 6:30 Eastern time start, and it'll be on Fox.
Jim Nantz joining us here on the K&C Masterpiece on 105.3 The Fan. And I said earlier that I think when the Cowboys are at their best, that they are a superior team to San Francisco, but I also think that the margin of error for both teams is very, very thin. What can the Cowboys do against San Francisco specifically to make them at their best?
Well, I think the Cowboys, when they are operating at their best, and you're going to find a Cowboy team that you could argue is as healthy as it's been the entire year when you put all the parts together, Michael Gallup notwithstanding, but Tyron should be fine, and to have all those guys on defense that have only been together, when you take D-Law and you take Gregory and you take Micah, I think it's 12% of the plays this year they were on the field at the same time. So we haven't had a good chance to look at that. But when the Cowboys are full strength, I just think if they go out and play, they can, obviously they're capable of beating anybody. And this San Francisco team, the thing about them is there's an innovative kind of air about them. You don't know exactly what you're going to get. To credit to Kyle Shanahan, but they can come up with some really clever ways to game plan you. I think he's a great game plan coach. And I'm sure they would scare anybody if you saw them in the matchup. I'm not saying the players are scared about it, but this is a kind of a quality game that if you told me before we knew what the seeds were going to be, that if Dallas and San Francisco were to meet in the postseason, and you told me it was divisional week instead of the wild card week, I could definitely see that. I could definitely see both teams being, on to the second week if they hadn't matched up here, and even taken another step. If somebody told me Dallas and San Francisco were playing for the NFC Championship, had the seedings been different this year, I could see that too. Point is, you're going to have a high-quality team moving on, and you're going to lose a really quality team on the way out. Over on the AFC side of the ledger, there are some stories there that you don't really see a deep run for some of these teams. Can Pittsburgh go back to Arrowhead and play Kansas City differently than it did just 3 weeks ago? I don't know. That's hard to imagine. I had to sit on that game, on Christmas weekend, and it was a blowout from the first quarter, and maybe it'll be different this time. But Dallas and San Francisco it's a wonderful matchup. It could have been on any one of these weekends.
Jim, your partner, Tony Romo, he's just been out of football for a little bit. And when I was out of baseball, immediately it was kind of easy for me to do scouting reports because I was just in the room for years and years. And so I knew all the books on everybody. But as I was away from the game longer and longer, I had to do a little bit more work because it wasn't fresh on how to get Prince Fielder out because I hadn't faced Prince Fielder in 3 or 4 years. How's Tony doing with, this is the Cowboy playoff game that he hasn't been a Dallas Cowboy now for a few years and hasn't played against San Francisco in a few years, in studying the teams now that he hasn't recently played against?
Well, that's a fair question. I know this. His brain is amazing. It's a beautiful mind, and he has this ability. He's been out, by the way, 5 years. It's kind of gone quickly. It's 5 years in the booth. We're over 100 games into our time together, and it seems like we've gotten here really quickly. But he has an ability to see formations and instantly identify where the sweet spot is, the soft spot in the defense. It's just boom. It doesn't take him 10 seconds to figure it out. It's instantaneous. It's like a chess master that can look at a board and move down and play another game and then another game, and a guy that takes on 15 different chess games at one time. He makes a move and goes to the next board. Tony's brain is amazing. And listen, he watches a lot of film during the week. He comes to the booth prepared, and he'll be ready for this one. That's not even a thought for me. It's just the fact that he's been away from it for a while. He's just too smart. And you can obviously tell that he dedicated a lot of time to studying formations and players' tendencies, and he comes to the booth knowing a lot of that. I think that, you just, if you have something that's going to tip somebody off about where you're going to go, which direction you're heading, or where the play might be sent, he sees it. It doesn't take him long to identify it. And, man, I tell you, all these years of being with him now, like 103 games, I guess it is, it still just dazzles me. And I know it dazzles the viewer to see some of the things that pre-snap that Tony's able to point out to us.
Jim, we really appreciate you jumping on with us, and I know we're all hoping for a game unlike any other. So thank you very much for your time.
I love it. Guys, thank you. I know you got Jerry coming on. Excited about being back in Dallas. And, hey, this could be a glorious, let's see, today's the 14th. The 13th of February is the Super Bowl. This could be another 30 days for the ages.
Oh, okay? Yes.
Anything you want us to ask Jerry for you?
No, I just look forward to seeing him.
All right.
I really do. I know he's stoked. Hey, man, listen, you got a team here that's got young players that you can anchor a whole roster around on both sides of the football. I mean, he's done, and Mike McCarthy have done a fabulous job of putting a coaching staff together. Look, everybody wants your coaches. It feels about right for the Cowboys. I know the schedule. If you do look ahead, peek ahead, and you think, oh, my God, I got to go to Green Bay, got to go to Tampa, whatever it is, it's a lot to ask, but this team's capable, I believe, of facing those challenges and doing what it needs to do.
Thank you again, good sir. Looking forward to Sunday. We'll talk with you later.
Give Jerry my best, too. Thanks for having me on.